My third group of logical fallacies involves appeals to the wrong things. A whole series of fallacies can be separately identified as some form of appeal to something that does not actually justify the claim. The things appealed to include at least authority, popular opinion, nature, emotion, nationality, tradition, ignorance, and personal incredulity. The only type of appeal to authority that is acceptable is when you point out that something is the consensus among experts and then point to some good source to show that it is in fact the consensus. The point of doing that is not to show that the opinion is true, just that it is the consensus of experts. Therefore, it is reasonable to accept the opinion provisionally unless you are an expert on the subject yourself, or have very good reasons to think that you might be right even when going against the consensus view. Typically, crackpots think that they are smarter than everyone else, but that's another thing. Appealing to some authority that is not an actual expert opinion on the subject is always a fallacy. Some people like to appeal to a so-called holy text, which may be claimed to be infallible. Such an extraordinary claim would have to be proven first. For now, nothing can be accepted as infallible, and no holy text or any other has any authority in matters of knowledge. Just the fact that a person is in fact a good authority on some subject, being highly respected expert in one area of expertise, does not make them an expert on another. Few scientists can rightfully claim to be experts on many different branches within their own science, much less on a completely different science. Appealing to popular opinion, often also called the bandwagon fallacy, or in Latin ad populum, assumes that there's a reason to trust the opinion of the masses. If you think about all the silly things people have believed in the past, or how common some very clearly nonsensical ideas are even now, it should be clear that listening to the common people is not a very good idea. There's a reason I keep mentioning the experts. By that I usually mean academic professionals who study natural sciences or human sciences, and who have created and are part of a universal system of fact-checking and truth-seeking known as science. That is the best tool we have for discovering what actually is the case. George Carlin has urged you to think about how dumb the average person is, and then to realize that half of the population is even dumber than the average person. So, don't think those ignorant masses are much of a guide if you want to know anything. Appeals to nature are often used in advertising. You are meant to assume that natural equals good, healthy, and so on. But most known poisons are natural, occurring in nature. It's not even clear what is meant by natural, what the term actually is supposed to mean. It is often used to mean something that is not artificial. But artificially produced things are usually also very well checked for health risks and such things, unlike natural substances or products. Artificial things may well be more healthy or safer than natural things. Sometimes it is thought that nature is in some strange, ethical sense good. This completely ignores pretty much everything that biologists study. the horrible cruelty of a lot of life and death. Think of parasitoid wasps, for example, or what that natural selection in evolution through natural selection means or entails. The amount of suffering that most wildlife has to endure is almost without limit. Fear, pain, hunger, exposure to the elements, injury, rivalry, being cast out of the pack or herd, disease, being eaten alive, or dying some other way. In fact, there are too many ways of dying to list here. And even when there is pleasure, for example, it is often at the expense of others. Where's the ethical good in that? Where can you see that kind of goodness in nature? If anyone tries to tell you or to imply that nature is good or that natural things are good, they are probably trying to sell you something such as poor quality merchandise or a questionable idea. Appealing to emotions in general is also a way of trying to manipulate you. Appealing to emotions is not done explicitly, stating that because of some emotion E, the proposition P must be true. Rather, the method is to instill an emotion in you. The effect of your emotions is meant to subvert your ability to think critically. An emotional depiction of a situation or event can inspire hate, for example. This hate can be directed at a minority group, as is often done. Emotions should not be allowed to dictate your actions. If you feel strong emotion that seems to motivate you to some action, you might do well to try and think why you feel it, where it originated. Are there good, rational reasons for the action, and why might that action still be a bad idea? As always, it may be a good idea to ask yourself who benefits. In politics, the far right does an unfortunately good job of inspiring hate, and a lot of people unthinkingly accept their narratives and end up being manipulated. Appealing to nationalism is one notorious way of manipulating people. It is usually done in a very emotional manner, so could be classed under the general appeal to emotion. But nationalism is a specific set of beliefs and ideas that have been used and are being used to horrible effect. Anyone who does not have the alarm bells of the bullshit generator go off when confronted with nationalism has not studied much history, nor are they much aware of what kinds of inhuman things are being done at present around the world. Yet millions of people are easily manipulated by such an appeal to their basest instincts. Appealing to tradition is very similar to appealing to nationalism. But just because people have been doing things one way for some time, it does not follow that they should still keep on doing it that way. It might not be the right or even a good way to do things. Whether the traditional way is good or not needs to be shown. It cannot be just assumed. There have been many horrible traditions, and some things are still being practiced that should have been stopped ages ago. Tradition is just the opinion of the ignorant masses that has some history. It might actually not even be a long history. Usually, it only takes about one generation for something to turn into a tradition. It is not a sure guide to the truth or to anything good, even though it has to be admitted that sometimes traditions can be the result of trial and error. But what is good and especially the best way to do things now needs to be argued for without appeal to the past or to traditions. Appealing to ignorance is perhaps the silliest fallacy in this category. The God of the gaps argument is a notorious example of this. The idea is that something is allegedly unexplained or even unexplainable by science, and therefore God exists or God did it or some such nonsense. When you don't know, you just don't know. Nothing more follows from not knowing. The claim that something can never be explained by science is quite an extraordinary claim and seems to require knowledge about the future that humans clearly do not possess. An appeal to personal incredulity is a form of appeal to ignorance. You may find it difficult to believe that the ancient Egyptians and many other peoples built huge pyramids, but that does not mean they did not do it. And you most certainly cannot claim that because you don't believe they did, some aliens from outer space must have done it.